Welcome back to another episode. Today we're going to take a closer look at one of my favorite semiconductor companies, Advanced Micro Devices, aka AMD. We can see unfortunately year to date the stock is down roughly 48.35%. Yesterday I did a poll and I asked you the viewers, what do you guys want to watch for the next video? Most of you voted AMD and 3 reasons to be bullish in this company. So let's get started.
I do want to thank The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and make sure to check out fool.com/Jose to get the top 10 stocks to buy right now.
I do want to say right now there is a lot of fear in the semiconductor market, right? We are seeing things with like inventory correction, consumer spending decreasing, and just the overall kind of supply chains tensions worldwide right now. So we definitely have a lot of fear here in the semiconductor space. For those that are not familiar, I enjoy the semiconductor market. A huge portion of my portfolio is in this space, either being through ETFs or individual companies. And the main reason is I used to work as an electrical engineer, and I got firsthand experience of where some of this cool technology can go in the future that I believe it's gonna be a great investment for me. So if we take a closer look at AMD, I wanna say the first bullish reason is their overall financials. And if you disagree with any of my thoughts, feel free to let me know in the comments below. I always like to hear both sides of the story. And we can take a closer look at AMD right now. Cash flow from operations in most recent quarter was roughly $965 million. Free cash flow was $842 million. So we can see they are profitable, they are positive in that cash flow, which is always a great thing. Normally when it comes to tech stocks, right, we have that fear of kind of stock-based compensation being the true reason for some of this positive cash flow. But at the end of the day, Advanced Micro Devices only has $275 million in stock-based compensation with this most recent quarter. So even without the stock-based compensation, this company will still have a nice amount of cash flow. We are seeing that stock-based compensation has increased a nice amount in the past few quarters. Not something I personally would worry too much, especially if we see right the overall cash flow still being pretty healthy. Next, I also wanted to take a closer look at its balance sheet, right? Cash and short-term investments of roughly $5.5 billion. They do have a nice amount of total long-term debt of $2.5 billion. The company recently made an acquisition and it's kind of done a few senior notes to also increase the overall buyback in shares. So company has built up a nice amount of debt, but we can still see the company is positive, has huge cash and short-term investment, and like I mentioned again, that huge free cash flow. The final thing I want to showcase is just this company, again, with the overall acquisition, they did increase the overall average diluted shares, but the company is buying back. So we can see a nice amount of stocks buy back this most recent quarter and last quarter as well, and I don't think this is going to stop. So like I mentioned, for my first point, I do want to say the overall strength of AMD is its financials, and that's a huge reason to be bullish in the company. The next two are going to take a closer look at more of its products and just the overall business, but it's always important to understand the financial side. And to me, there's nothing that would worry me for AMD in forms of their financials in the long term of things. Next, I want to take a closer look at the second reason. And to me, the second reason to be bullish in AMD is this is a very diversified company, right? And that's very important, especially during times like now, right? Right now, we are seeing a strong kind of headwind market in the consumer side. And AMD about a year ago was, or maybe a few years ago, was very dependent on the consumer side. But right now, they are diversifying either through acquisitions or through just self-organic technological growth that they are hitting other markets outside of the consumer space. And that has been a huge kind of improvement, or kind of I want to say some form of support for AMD in the overall revenue. We can see in the most recent quarter, $5.6 billion in revenue, and it's pretty much divided in 4 segments. They're kind of similar in percentage-wise. Obviously, some are bigger than others, but there's not one that's outstandingly driving this company's total revenue. We can see data center revenue was $1.6 billion, up 45% year over year. The client revenue, which is more of the consumer, was down 40% year over year and sitting at $1 billion, but still pretty impressive in forms of revenue numbers. Their gaming revenue, $1.6 billion. Their embedded revenue, $1.3 billion. So we can see a little bit in the diversification, and I want to showcase a little bit more here, explaining how they're kind of improving their solutions in this space. But before we go any further, guys, if you are enjoying this episode, make sure to hit the thumbs up, as it does help me grow my overall audience. If you want to support a little bit more, make sure to sign up using my link at fool.com/Jose. Finally, if you are here, it means you enjoy the semiconductor space, and I wanted to kind of create an outlet where I do a very long kind of podcast, a weekly podcast talking about the semiconductor space. That is a brand new channel. Episode 4 was just released, and episode 5 should be coming out tomorrow. Again, weekly podcast on the semiconductor market. I'm usually joined by a great host, and we kind of go back and forth. So check out the pin to that channel should be down below on the pinned comment. So here we can see that during the company's most recent analyst day for 2022, which was earlier this year, they do mention that in the next 5 years, they see this huge total addressable market of roughly $300 billion. A few things that we can see here. First, it's going to be driven mainly by the data center market. And this is great news because this is kind of the enterprise space. And right now we are seeing huge growth in the clouding world with kind of like recommended solutions that we see in video streaming services, in social media companies, and e-commerce as well, advertisement, and I don't see this ending anytime soon. The other thing we are seeing is AMD kind of leaving that dependency of the consumer space. I do want to say in the consumer market here is probably more dependent on the gaming side. A good portion of the PCs, some is the consumer, some is obviously enterprise and kind of workstations, and the automotive market. But overall, we can see a good portion of this company's total addressable market is most likely in the industrial, in the business, in the enterprise world. So it becomes a little bit less dependent, and it doesn't get affected too much with kind of the macroeconomics we might be seeing. And we can see just in the past month alone, these are just articles released on November of how AMD is increasing their solutions. On November 16th, it was announced that their ultra-scale FPGAs will be used for kind of the automotive market. We also see kind of AMD, their processors from their GPU accelerators to their CPU processors on data centers are powering 101 supercomputers in the latest top 500 list, a 38% year-over-year increase. For those not familiar, there is a list that follows the top 500 supercomputers in the world, and we can see 101 are powered by some form of AMD solution. I do want to say the number one supercomputer is in all AMD systems, so we can see the overall strength of this player. We can see also November 15th, AMD announced some kind of solutions for the overall space market, space travel, satellite communications, and all that. Very impressive there. We can also see that AMD on November 10th released their next generation of AMD CPU processors for the data center, Genoa, their 4th generation. They're seeing huge adoption here, so very impressive there. We also see AMD on the consumer side on November 10th. They did announce AMD RDNA 3, which is their graphics card for the consumer market. So even though the consumer market is weak right now, they are still developing new solutions. Another one, the most recent, actually came out on December 1st, and AMD is doing a collaboration to kind of help expand 5G network expansion using some of the products that they have from their system on chips and their FPGAs. So we can see that this is a very diversified company. I enjoy the diversity because, one, it helps eliminate the dependency of one market, and if one market might be seeing a weakness, the other markets can help kind of offset that decline like we're seeing right now, right? We are seeing the decline in the consumer market, in the client revenue, but we are seeing that strong strength in the data center market. We are seeing that strong strength in the embedded market. So the overall diversification, in my opinion, is another reason to be bullish in this stock. Another thing I do want to mention is for all these solutions that they have an active roadmap for new products to be released either next year, next 2 years or so. So this is a company that's focusing on not just having new solutions, but also innovating solutions to remain very competitive in this space. So I do want to say the third reason to be very bullish on AMD is this is a company that seems to be focusing on their high margin segments. So if we take a closer look at their quarter 3 results, we can see what are their high margin segments. There's pretty much two. The first one is the data center market. We can see $1.6 billion in revenue, they have $500 million in operating income. So somewhere around 29-28% margin here. The other one is the embedded market, roughly $1.3 billion in revenue and over $600 million in operating income. So we can see the operating margins here are roughly 48-49%. And this is where AMD is kind of focusing right now. I do believe that AMD willingly is kind of losing out or kind of losing market share in the consumer market. And we can see why. The consumer market, because of the state it is right now, is not the best place to kind of invest money into right now. Out of net revenue of $1 billion this most recent quarter, it actually had an operating loss of $26 million. So pretty much a little bit less than 0% margins here. And I do believe AMD's management sees this and say, hey, at the moment, maybe we shouldn't focus too much of our power in the consumer space. Maybe we should focus somewhere else. I'm pretty sure most of you in the tech space might have seen this, that Intel is grabbing back market share in both the notebook and the desktop PC market. And this is kind of a report done by Mercury Research. You can definitely find a lot of reports here, but overall, AMD is losing market share on the consumer side. Outside that, though, they are gaining market share on the server side. For example, AMD last year in quarter 3 of 2021 only had 10.2% of the total market. Now in quarter 3 of 2022, they have roughly 17.5%. Again, that's very, very impressive because the data center market has those high margins. The other thing we are seeing is in the kind of graphics card market, AMD is losing market share to Nvidia and to Intel in the graphics market as well. Again, I do want to say the graphics market is in the gaming side, and the gaming side does not have high margins either. So I would have to say that AMD is willingly not focusing too much right now in the consumer side. At the same time, AMD is still investing, right? They did release the new graphics card for the consumer market. They did release a new processor for the consumer market, but they are not focusing too much on maybe over creating too much inventory because they know the space is a bit weak. We saw recent reports on November 24th that AMD is going to increase their Xilinx FPGA prices by up to 25%. One thing that we are seeing or hearing in the semiconductor market is the semiconductor shortage is done, but that's not true. It might be done in one space, but there's still huge supply chain issues in things like the embedded market, like the FPGA market. So AMD is still investing pretty heavily in supply chain there, in inventory, and they're kind of trickling down that cost to their customers. The embedded market is expected, and that's where most of these FPGAs are. The embedded market is expected to see some price increases. So I wouldn't be surprised if the embedded market margins increase a little bit next quarter. So I want to say these are the 3 reasons I'm super bullish in AMD. I am a shareholder. This is one of my top 3 positions in my portfolio. So let me know in the comments below, what did you think about this video? Are you bullish on AMD or are you bearish? Take care, have a good day, and see you next time.